Thank you very much, and good morning to you and your viewers, Sis Desiree. Well, I can tell you that, the SGB chairperson, who's also the deputy principal at Sekampaneng Primary School, was actually with us this morning, but he could not talk at that present moment, as he said that, he needed to engage part of the SGB before he can come and sort of give us some sort of a reaction. Well, if I can just have a walkthrough with my colleague, I can explain that, this school was actually built somewhere in the 1960s, and apparently it's the community of Sekampaneng itself that actually decided that they are going to make donations, have some proper building material in order to build this particular school. But during that time in the 60s, what they did not have was the engineering capacity to sort of establish as to whether this particular area would be suitable to build a school. And as things would eventually come out, this area is some sort of a wetland or a swamp. As you can see, there is some water that is there, and in fact the learners have not been able to come to school due to this particular condition for almost 3 weeks. Well, I'm joined by the Gauteng Education spokesperson, Mr. Steve Mabona, to try and explain the situation and how they're going to resolve it going forward. But Steve, I understand this school was built by the community, hence there were some shortcomings. Elaborate.
Yes, indeed. We have sent our engineers, and there's a call that was made that to a certain extent some of the structures need to be demolished, because now that will be then long term. We have decided that we need to then give them additional mobile units, which will then necessitate that learners must come back to school, because they will be housed in the mobile units. That's where they will be taught. And in a sense, we have lost 3 weeks of no schooling here because of the SGB and some community members who felt that they need to shut down the school. So we want to call upon them to say, during this recess, we will make sure that at least all those mobile that are needed here, they are delivered. We know that at some point they were saying they don't want mobile units. We don't have any other alternative. Can't build a school or a block of classrooms tomorrow. Even if we demolish, we need engineers to come, do an assessment and check, can we build in this area or not? So we have a service provider that is going to looking at the rechanneling of the water. To a certain extent, there are some classrooms that you also have, water that is, in front of the block. So we just want to rechannel, because they told that it's doable. They want to rechannel the water, and probably will then be in a position to continue with the process of teaching in the other classes that are also affected by this water. So we are hopeful that that service provider will then be allowed to come into the work, because we understand that last year there was a misunderstanding when the service provider came to work at the school. There was an indication that they want to patch the wall that fell, which the community and the school and the SGB did not accede to that call to say you can't patch because structurally this does not look that it's sustainable. It might fall, or it might endanger our children.
If I may just interject there and ask my colleague to just show the wall that Prastif is actually talking about, which has actually collapsed. It's not clear as to what could have actually caused this particular collapse, but there are differing views from the department and from the community. The community saying the structural integrity does not look like the learners would be able to enter there. But you mentioned that you had an educated opinion about that particular structure.
Yes, we had an opinion that if you can rebuild that part in a modern way, reinforce it differently, because like as you said, this school was built by donations, and so you might have not had the engineering process that would have saved the wall rather. So we are saying the advice was that it could be, but the community and the school said no, we don't think that it's viable. So hence we acceded to that. We'll then demolish, but because it's long term, you can't say demolish this week and in the next week you want us to build there. The process of demolishing will happen. but then it will be informed by the engineers that will then give us guidance. Can you rebuild here or move further and build, the new structure, which is something that we'll do. But in the interim, we've agreed that we'll give them additional mobiles. We had actually identified 3, but we'll give them more. So they should have around 13 mobile units, which will then be accommodating all learners. So when we open on term 2, we should be having all learners here. And we encourage parents to send their children here, and also discourage members of the community and those that are concerned who want us to build. That in the community there's a certain percentage that the community must get, and that sometimes becomes an interest of the so-called community members. So we appeal with them. It's a long term. It's not going to happen tomorrow. So we just want to plead that learners must come back. They must be in the classroom while we deal with the process of demolition and rebuilding the structure.
And it seems like this situation has deteriorated over time. We heard some of the officials actually say that the wall collapsed about 12 months ago, so there's been some time where the situation has been deteriorating. We saw even this block of classes here is actually sinking to a point where the windows at the back, they are literally on the ground itself. What has taken so much time for the department to respond to some of the cries by the community and the SGB itself?
No, we responded last year. We were here immediately. The engineers came. That's why we had those reports, which gave us guidance on how to move forward. But subsequently, DID as well came on site just to verify on what we would have done using their engineers as well. They recommended that some part of the structures must not even be utilized, and hence there are classes that we said, cordon off, don't use this area. But there are areas where you could still use, because there's nothing wrong with those structures at the back. So we then were continuing with that. But now community, with the SGB, they felt that no, let's demolish everything and rebuild. But then we said, because it's not something that we can do in a short term, and there's another school that is going to be built in the area, which is now in the planning phase, and it will alleviate a lot of pressure from the school. So with that short term, having those mobiles, continue to teach, have the school that is in the planning stage, and also continue that you teach, because what is concerning now this is a foundation phase. There's a foundation phase here from grade R up until grade 3, intermediate 4 to 7. Critical, because then those are moving to secondary. So it's quite key that they must be in the classroom. They must, go through their curriculum to the end.
Thank you very much. Well, as you heard, that's Gauteng Education Department spokesperson assuring the public that come the opening after the Easter holidays, the learners will be able to actually attend classes here at Sekampaneng Primary School, of which, as you can see right behind me, there is a situation where classes, some of them, the walls have collapsed due to some of the water that's actually here, as the school was actually built in the 60s without having established as to whether this particular location could be a wetland that could be detrimental to the structures that are built here. And with that, it's back to studio.